Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Directions Mag Geospatial webinar. Today, sponsored by our friends at Esri. I'm Barbara Duke, Managing Editor here at Directions Mag, joined by our webinar producer, Lynette Qualia. We encourage you to read the latest geospatial news, exclusive articles, listen to a podcast, of course, watch more webinars at directionsmag.com. We are excited to have Suzanne Fosbeck with us, as well as Kevin Armstrong. They are with us today to talk about real-time solutions in ArcGIS. They've got lots of great examples to get you not only started, but be incredibly effective for your organization. So welcome, team.
Thank you very much, Barbara. We're really excited to speak with everyone here today about how real-time geospatial technology can support threat monitoring and related security operations workflows. So today, as I think probably everybody on this call knows, we're living in a time with heightened levels of global instability. And now more than ever, all kinds of organizations are working to ensure continuity of operations amidst risk to facilities, to staff, and to other kinds of assets. So what does continuity of operations mean? One example is, of course, taking steps to maintain supply chains in the face, perhaps, of tornado risk that's near in the vicinity of a distribution facility, or awareness of social unrest or protests near a shareholder meeting and increasing facility security as a result, or implementing backup or failover operations in the wake of wildfire threatening telecommunications or electric infrastructure so as to minimize disruption. And of course, for commercial companies, continuity can also be about maintaining a consistent image of the brand. But in all these cases, it's about reducing impact, meeting obligations to customers, and keeping revenue and services consistent. And these needs for continuity of operations also play out across different scales. Larger organizations may have multiple facilities spread out across the country or internationally. And for these facilities, they need awareness of threats and insights on where to focus resources and efforts. And then there's also the tactical scale. So optimizing operations and security at and within a campus or an individual facility. Both of these different scales have highly related but nuanced needs in terms of awareness and response. And at the same time, there's significant challenges in threat monitoring and response workflows. So one set of challenges is associated with gathering, filtering, and leveraging a myriad of threat and risk data feeds. Threat data today ranges from classic examples like weather and natural disasters, to pollution or industrial accidents, to traffic jams, to crimes, to social unrest, and many more. And this data is coming from an ever-expanding set of sources. So there's historically trusted sources like governments and state agencies and news outlets, but also this kind of data is increasingly coming from social media, from different commercial providers. And then, of course, organizations may have their own internal and direct reporting of incidents, such as practices around see something, say something, for example. Now, coming from all these different avenues, this also means that threat and risk data comes in many formats and also in a lot of different protocols, which makes it difficult to synthesize and use effectively. So that's one major challenge with threat monitoring. So in addition to challenges from the nature of the different kinds of threat data that are out there, organizations also have many different types of assets to protect, and there's challenges with this also. So the assets to protect might include staff and, well, certainly usually will include staff and personnel, facility and office locations, in some cases vehicles and vessels, equipment, and also infrastructure. Some of these types of assets are static while others are moving. And like threats, access information on the current state of these assets may be involving different data formats. And in a lot of organizations, the data on assets and facilities is captured and stored in different siloed systems. And the third major challenge in security operations is around organizational policies and procedures. So there's a common need to have a single pane of glass, so to speak, to see everything in one place, the threats, the assets, but there's also a great deal of variety in what that single pane of glass needs to look like and how information needs to be represented. And then dissemination of threat information also needs to be handled in different ways for different kinds of stakeholders. And alerting and notification rules can vary by organization and by role. Because of the importance of location as a vital factor in threat monitoring, Real-time location intelligence is key to powering different dimensions of security operations, which we have arrayed in sort of a carousel here on this slide. So different dimensions include threat detection and incident triage, to investigations and analysis, staff protection, event security, and physical facility security. And what we're going to do today is walk through some capabilities within the ArcGIS system that support all of this by making information actionable and providing insight to support decision-making. ArcGIS enables end-to-end workflow to monitor the critical assets for an organization and understand the what that's potentially impacting them. ArcGIS is a system of systems, and it can integrate all types of data and sensors. And additionally, through a real-time analytical engine, ArcGIS can help sort out the noise by applying your specified business requirements. In other words, you can set the rules on how you get alerted, what you get alerted on, and you can change them as needed. And this is all configurable through a web-based architecture that's accessible from anywhere and enables different information products and tools. So this means everyone from executives to end users have access based on their role in the event and their level of security access as well. And it supports all types of information gathering, assessment, collaboration, and data sharing. And so what we're going to start with through a set of examples is global security operations and threat management. And for that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Kevin Armstrong.
All right, thank you, Suzanne. So what I want to do is start today with an overview of what it would look like to use ArcGIS for a global security operation. And we're going to start with a real example here. In this dashboard, what we're looking at is a security operations center that is monitoring all of our Esri facilities. So we have about 200 locations that we're actively monitoring, as well as a few employees who have opted in to turn on location tracking. So as they move around to places like conferences or customer sites, that we can monitor their locations as well. So on this dashboard here, we're providing kind of an executive view of all the trends of incidents that have happened near our facilities. In this case, we're looking at the last 24 hours and determining if the number in the last 24 hours, the number of incidents, has increased or decreased based on the 24-hour window prior to that. So on the top left here, we can see globally, the number of incidents is down 7% in the last 24 hours. And we can easily go in and look at the top 10 locations where we've seen the most incidents. So in any one of these, we can either look globally or within a particular region. Like on the top right here, I can look within Europe and see Rotterdam has had quite a few incidents. And if I click on Rotterdam, it'll show me the types of incidents that have been occurring there in the last 24 hours. So this is just a great view for an executive to have the pulse of the organization at their fingertips and be able to ask more questions and see the larger trends of what's going on day to day. We have another view of this data as well, this time in a map view where we're looking at the hotspots of those incidents over the last recent hours. So in this case, we can see, here's our incidents in Rotterdam. We see a hotspot there. We see New York, Florida, Southern California. We can see, again, those gauges on the first dashboard are reflected in the map here, and just allows us to understand where these incidents are happening over that time frame. We can look at incident trends by region over time as well to determine if we're seeing a spike in activity based on previous days that we have detected incidents. And we also have another view here that is more of a global awareness. This view is showing us all the most severe incidents, regardless of their proximity to any of our facilities. So as we zoom in on the map here, we can see, obviously we have a lot of hurricane activity in the Atlantic and the Pacific. And we also have all the headlines from each of our different incident providers that they have scored with the highest severity. So it's kind of almost like a headline news feed here, just the GIS version of that. And this allows our executive to go in and filter incidents and see what's been happening today or what's happened yesterday, and easily have this information and understand the trends. Because Just because something doesn't happen next to or near a facility of yours doesn't mean that there can't be any sort of cascading impact across the organization. So a large power outage or even a hurricane could impact a large swath of area. And so this just gives you those most severe incidents so you can be aware of what's going on across the globe. The next thing we can do is basically take the same information, but change the way we display it. In this case, we're looking at a dashboard that's designed for an analyst. So as an analyst at a security, in a security operations center, the trends are also, are important to me, but I also want to see each individual incident. As an analyst, I can go in and review individual incidents as they occur. I get a list here on the right side that's showing me all the different incidents that we've seen, the source and a description and what time they came in, and also what office that they're potentially impacting. And we have a whole series of filters here where I can go in and maybe I just want to pick a particular region to monitor, or I'm looking at a particular office, or maybe I just want to look at a particular type of incident or severity of incident. I can bring all that in and filter the dashboard to get exactly what I'm looking for. So in this case, I'm just going to go in and filter for all the crime incidents that have occurred recently. So I can scroll down the list here and see these are all the crimes that we've detected recently. So I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in here to this top incident. This one just occurred recently here, just about a minute ago. And in this case, we're monitoring an area around the Orlando airport. So we see this happened just 1 minute ago. So we had an incident reported via Orlando Fire. So this came from Dataminer, one of our sources. And this is going to show us where the incident is, as well as where the asset that we're monitoring is located as well. And this just allows me as an analyst to go in, I can view the source. So of all the different sources of information we're bringing in, they all have a link within their feed to go back to the original source. So if it was a NOAA warning, I could link back to the NOAA site to view the full text description. In this case, I could click this link and launch me into Dataminer to view that facility or to view that incident. The next thing I can do as an analyst is actually generate an email to that individual facility. So when I click that link, it's automatically going to take some information from the pop-up here and pass that information into the body of the email, and I can send that off to our manager at that particular location. And what that does is it sends them an email and allows them to fill out a form on their side where they can share information back with us. So let me bring over that, what that looks like. So on my phone here, we can see I've got that email came in to me. I can click the link, and this will open up a form for me that I can then go in and fill out the information that I see on the ground at this location. So obviously it's going to give me the location of the incident. I can open this up and, if I'm not standing at the incident, I can report my location of where I'm standing. And then I can say, okay, is our asset open or closed? Are we impacted at all? What's the severity of the incident? Is it going to be affecting operations? I can enter in any notes as the manager that I want to share back to our security operations center. Suspicious person. And I can also take photos if that's something I want to do as well. I can open up the camera on my phone. I can snap a photo of what I see, and then I can submit that report and send it back to our operations center. So back in the operations center, once that report is sent back to me, it's going to show up on our dashboard. So I'm going to go ahead and close this pop-up here, and you'll see now that report just popped up here. So now as an analyst, I can go in, I can select that report, I can see the information that was filled out, I can see any media that they share with us, photos or videos, and just gives me information about that particular incident. So once I've gotten that information back, I can now triage that incident. So I can say, okay, this is under review. I can say, okay, what did they share with us about the status of their asset? We can also post this information to other business systems. So in this case, we're going to push this alert to Microsoft Teams because our security folks are using that platform. But this could be any of the other common communication platforms that you all may use. In this case, we're not going to notify our executive team. And then as an analyst, I can fill out any notes that I see necessary to inform everyone of what my assessment of the situation is based on what we've received. So once I hit submit there, this is going to basically send that information out. And I'm going to bring over my Teams window here. And you'll see that this is now push that information. Here's a crime near the Orlando airport. And it's written that over to our Teams channel so that we can now begin communicating about that particular incident. Another common workflow, I guess, that people ask for is, when we're looking at an incident, they also want to get, obviously you want to reach out to your staff at that particular location, but they're also interested in accessing any other information they have at that facility, like security cameras or access control systems. So here's just an example. We actually had some live camera feeds that were shared with us, just to give you an idea of what that looks like in a dashboard. So say we had an incident around a particular facility, we could obviously zoom into that facility, bring up the locations of the traffic cameras themselves, and then again, select any one of the individual cameras and then have those show up within the dashboard. Just another way to get information back to the operations center in the hands of the analysts so that they can triage this incident, determine if there's further action required on the part of the security team. So this is just another example of getting information from the field. In this case, we're tying into a camera system so that we have that information at our fingertips. We don't have to wait for someone to perhaps reply via to an email or a message. We have this right at our tips. We can turn it on and see the live image. So that's another example. So that's looking at sort of the real-time workflow, right? All these incidents are coming in, we're from multiple sources, we're fusing that information together, and we're able to bring that to a dashboard view and see incidents in real time and how they're affecting or not all of our assets that we're monitoring. The other thing that we can do with ArcGIS is retain all those incidents. So all that data that comes in, we close out an incident, and it's gone from the dashboard. We don't delete any of that information. We're retaining that on the back end because that's useful for analytical workflows or trend analysis. So this particular real-time process we've been running almost 3 years now. So this has allowed us to basically amass a wealth of information about what's going on around our facilities. And we've brought that data into this Insights workbook here. And what this does is show us all the incidents that we've detected. In this case, we've filtered it just for this year. And now we can start doing some trend analysis. So what regions of the world that we're occupying are having the most incidents? Of those incidents, what time of day or day of week, are there any temporal trends throughout the day that we need to be aware of? What facilities see the most incidents? Right, and what's been the trend over time? Are things getting better or worse throughout our collection of assets? So I can just go in here and say I'll filter for our Chicago office. So we see, in our top 10 list, they're number 3. They had over 8,000 incidents that we've detected near that office, and I'm going to filter the entire view here to show me just the trends around Chicago itself. So at first I can see, okay, I see we have 8,300 incidents. Now I get a picture for the daily trends around Chicago itself. So I see, Thursday, Friday afternoon, we have kind of a larger number of incidents, and the same thing during the week in the later hours, so 7, 8, 9 p.m. So this is an important trend to be able to visualize and use this data if we need to go and ask for more budget, right, for additional security, or maybe we don't have security here, and we can use this to justify adding security for particular times of the day. And we can see things like trends as well. what's been the trend over time? Do we see any seasonality to incidents around this facility? And then what are the incident types, right? What are the types of things happening that we're detecting? We see crime is obviously the highest category by far. So again, just more information for us to use if we need to justify budgeting decisions or personnel decisions or both. So that's kind of an overview of how we can utilize ArcGIS to ingest all these feeds and bring that information in real time, and also do some trend analysis. So we're going to go back to Suzanne now for a little bit of an overview.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, so I just wanted to briefly cut in and sort of recap what Kevin's walked through so far are a few examples of user-facing solutions. So before we headed into the demonstrations, we were talking about some of the ways in which ArcGIS helps curate information into information products. Some of the user-facing solutions that Kevin had been walking through are, of course, dashboards that report on incoming threat information and allow either the executive or the analyst to assess and summarize risk. He showed some integrated tools for response and collaboration. And then in this last example, an analysis application to look at trends that can inform strategic planning. Next, while we're still on this topic of global security operations, we're going to take a brief look under the hood at some of the real-time components in ArcGIS that are driving data and results into these applications. So what we're going to look at specifically in the context of these demonstrations is ArcGIS Velocity, which is a real-time analysis engine within ArcGIS. And so I'll hand it back over to you, Kevin, to keep going and kind of show us behind the curtain, so to speak.
All right, thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, so how did that data get to the dashboard, right? How do we connect to all those different sources of information, like Suzanne mentioned earlier, and do that analysis of the areas around our facilities and determine which incidents are going to show up on the dashboard? So we're using ArcGIS Velocity behind the scenes, and this is the real-time analytic that's running and polling all those different feeds. So on the left here, you can see here, we've got 4 active feeds running right now. So our active wildfires, this is from the Esri Living Atlas, right? This is included in ArcGIS, showing us the locations of the latest wildfire starts across the US. We also have connected to several of our third-party commercial providers. So Data Capable, Factal, Data Miner, they all provide a global feed of incidents. So they monitor various government sources, social media, etc., and they create a live feed of incidents for things like protests, crime, transportation incidents, etc. So using Velocity, we can connect to all those different feeds and bring them into our incident detection workflow. And adding a feed is as simple as going into Velocity here and say, hey, I want to connect to some feeds, and I can go through all the different feed types that we support out of the box, because not everything is already in ArcGIS in a nice, simple format to ingest into a web map. Obviously, we can read from ArcGIS. You can connect to any feature layer you have access to, whether that's something from the Living Atlas or your own ArcGIS organization, or any other public feed or feed shared through a group. We can also connect to a lot of cloud providers. So if you have data in Azure or AWS, we can make connections to that data, or various data that just comes over the web. If you want to pull an API from a provider using HTTP or an RSS feed or WebSocket, again, a lot of different formats for you to connect to and bring data into Velocity. And then once that data is coming in, we're essentially using the out-of-box tools within Velocity to manage that data. So we're doing some field mapping where we're basically taking the schemas of all of these input feeds and we're putting them into a common schema so that we can then bring them in and join them to all of our facilities and see if they're close or within a certain distance. So you can see all the fields that are available out of the box to manage your data. And then we're also using some summary tools, doing a join. Basically, we're taking all of our asset locations down here on the left, and that includes all of our static facilities plus all of our employees who have enabled location tracking, and we're creating geofences around them by buffering their location. And then we determine if any of those threats fall within those geofences, we make that join, and then we write that out to this incidents detected feature service. And this feature service is basically, it's taking all of these input feeds and filtering it through, and anything that happens near a facility then is written to this service. And that service is what shows up in our dashboard right here. So this list on the right here is all the incidents that have made it through the hurdles that we've set up for it to determine if it should show up on the dashboard itself. This is a very simple workflow. Again, it's all configurable as well. So the logic that you set up to determine if a site is close enough to a facility, if it's a high enough severity, can all be configured within Velocity. So you can really customize this to your SOPs and what's important to your organization. So with that, we've got the global view that we're just showing you. So obviously, we can connect all these feeds, we can monitor, tens to hundreds to thousands to tens of the thousands of locations and determine if incidents are happening. But now we want to take kind of a different view of security, and we want to focus on down to a very local level, and a tactical level. And what we want to now focus on is, how do I take this same kind of concept and apply it to maybe just a single facility? Maybe I have a warehouse or a headquarters or a campus that I need to secure. I don't have hundreds of locations, I really have one, or maybe I have two. And what can I do at that scale to really help with our security and keeping ahead of events as they happen? So I want to go and show you an example of something we did for a local facility. So I'm going to bring up our dashboard that we set up for San Diego. So every year, Esri has a user conference in San Diego. This is, if you're familiar, you'll see, this is City of San Diego, and we have about 18,000 people show up at the convention center for a week of our user conference. And so in this case, it's a specific facility and a specific event. We don't own the facility, but we are having an event there, and we want to secure it to make sure everything goes smoothly. So what we did is we basically used the same workflow. We connected to multiple different threat feeds. So like we showed earlier, data miner, Factal, and data capable. Wildfires, because those are a big threat in Southern California. We also had a couple other partners provide feeds. We had White Fox, who is a provider that does drone detection. So we were monitoring drone activity around the convention center. And San Diego Fire also gave us access to a feed of their 911 calls. So again, same process. We're able to manage everything going on outside the facility, be aware of incidents as they happened. But there's a really big piece to this too, is everything's happening inside, or most everything's happening inside. So what we wanted to do was provide a security workflow for managing everything inside the convention center as well. So I'm going to zoom in here, and we'll see the convention center. I'm just going to select the ground level here. And the other thing that we were able to do is get a CAD data set for the interior of the convention center itself. So they were able to share that data with us, and with ArcGIS, we were able to take that CAD data and convert it into our ArcGIS indoors data model. So basically convert that CAD data to a GIS data set that we can then use to visualize the layout of all the floors of the convention center. We also had the Marriott, the Hilton, the Omni. So we had layouts for all of those facilities. And we also were able to use our ArcGIS IPS technology, it stands for Indoor Positioning System, to survey the convention center and use the Wi-Fi signal to enable indoor positioning. So allow you to basically know where you are within the convention center, what floor you're on, and also see the layout from the CAD data that we got from the convention center itself. So right now we're looking at the layout of the convention center, and we had access to 35 iPhones that Apple shared with us that we're able to give out to the guards each day. And you'll see their locations moving around here. We've fictionalized the names, but this just gives you an idea of what our view was at the convention center all week. In this case, we're basically seeing their locations in real time. They're running our Field Maps mobile app, and as they walk around, the indoor positioning is working. Every 15 seconds, I believe we had it set to, their position was reporting back to us. And we could see their names on the left here, see all those who were moving. We could see their battery status, etc., whether they were stationary or walking, and easily filter through all the different floors and be able to keep track of the guards themselves. And on their phones, the guards were given access to field maps. So I'm going to bring my phone back over again and show you what it looked like to the guards themselves. So here's the web map that they would open. So when the guard gets the phone, they basically open field maps. We'd already logged them in, and they would open up this map and ask them, do you want to enable location tracking? So it's kind of an opt-in process. And when they opt in and turn on the map, they're going to see not only their current location, where they'll see their blue dot on the map within the convention center, but we also added a feed of all the other guard locations as well as the security plan that we came up with. So things like security checkpoints, the exhibit hall layout, so we could easily go in and see the exhibit hall. They could go in and filter by floors. So if they're on the first floor now and they want to see what it looks like on the third floor, they can easily change that and see everybody, all of our checkpoints, all of the guards on the third floor, zoom in to see room labels, etc. Same thing for the mezzanine level if they wanted to see the mezzanine, and back to the first level. So very simple workflow for them to have some situational awareness, for us to know where they are they at their assigned post? If an incident occurs, being able to know who the closest guard is to an incident was very helpful. The other thing that we enabled was the ability for them to collect information. So if they're out on the floor walking around and they see a backpack laying on the ground and no one near it, right? So they can just go onto the map and click on the map and say, hey, I see an incident right here. I'm going to fill out a report about that particular incident. So they can say it's a suspicious package. I'm on the ground level, and they can fill out a description. Small black backpack. And then obviously they can take a photo as well, so they can snap a photo of that and then just hit submit. So this gave us a great way for them to push information to us. And now we see here on the dashboard on the right, we see that incident shows up on our dashboard. I can click on it as an analyst in our operations center, and I can see the status. I can see the location of the incident. And then I can see, obviously, the picture that we took and any information that we collected. So very useful for us to enable that workflow of not only seeing where you are within the convention center and what floor and where everyone else is, but also sending information back in real time to the operations center so that we're able to keep track of everything that's going on. And the other thing that we did around the convention center was build out a 3D model as well. So given that highly detailed floor information that we had, we were able to basically render a 3D model of the convention center and show not only just the layout, but also that real-time tracking data and suspicious packages, all those field reports that were coming in from users in the field. So this is just giving us a view of, here's the ground floor. We have, obviously 3D buildings of the convention center in downtown San Diego as well. And we can zoom through and kind of look at the different layouts, this is looking at the ground floor, we'll turn the mezzanine level on and see the layout there and see the locations of guards. And same thing for the upper level, we can turn that on too. So this was just a quick way to enable location tracking and really enable a security workflow for the inside of the facility using all of our out-of-the-box tools that are included in ArcGIS. So I want to take a break now and show you a little bit of behind the scenes that we did to enable that web map for the guards and for our dashboard to show the indoor capability. So I'm going to switch over to this web map here. And so we're in ArcGIS Online. We have our field map web app open. And this is the web map that the guards open out in the field. And it's the same web map we can use within our dashboards. And we have some out-of-the-box layers in here. So we have our indoor data model. So these are all the different layers that are part of that data model. And the levels here are basically these polygon layers of the layout of all the different floors. And we also included our planning layers, so our assignments, like all of our checkpoints. We have resource areas where we might need to stage, police or fire resources. And also our field report layer up here, which is the layer that they're editing to submit a field report. And then we have our location tracking layer. This is coming from field maps using that IPS location. And this is just updating every few seconds with the real-time location of our guards. So once all that data is in here, we can go into the map properties and under indoor layers right here, we can enable floor filtering. This is just an option that you turn on and it's going to ask you for some layers within the indoors data model that provide some knowledge to the web maps that it knows what to label each floor and what the name of the facility is. But along with that, you can add additional layers so that they also participate in the floor filtering. So like our location tracking layer, I can tell it what field in that data set has the level ID that we're using to tell us what floor everyone is on. So once I enable that, now I get this floor picker on the bottom right here. So I can easily see, okay, now I see the first floor. I can now select the second floor and also the third floor. So by doing this configuration within the web map and making that save and saving this information to the web map, that floor awareness is automatically picked up in the field app so that when it's opened up, the guard automatically sees our floor levels. They can switch in between, and all the data that participates in that filtering will automatically be filtered. So this was just a great way for us to basically set up our security team to be successful for the entire week of the conference and give them a view of information that we traditionally haven't had in the past. So with that, we're going to wrap it up and we're going to toss this back over to Suzanne.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kevin. So as we wrap up our session today, I just wanted to recap some of the fundamentals of the real-time capabilities in ArcGIS that power the threat monitoring solutions that Kevin was demonstrating. Overall, of course, any real-time system is going to need to enable ingestion, data management, analysis, and visualization of streaming and changing information. And those of you in the audience who are familiar with geospatial information systems might recognize these four things as the pillars of any geospatial technology. With respect to real-time workflows, a fifth main need is around alerting, actuation, and collaboration. Now, some of the key applications that enable these real-time security operations workflows include ArcGIS Velocity. You saw Velocity ingesting threat data from different sources, synthesizing them into a common data model, and performing real-time analytics to do geofencing and detect incidents. And then for visualization, configurable web mapping and dashboards serve to present information and also allow you to tailor the presentation of that information however the organization needs, which comes back to some of the challenges we were mentioning earlier about how every organization needs this kinds of information differently. Then lightweight applications like Survey123 were used at various parts in Kevin's workflows to support an analyst who might be doing triage of threats and working on response to threats. At the tactical and facility scale, ArcGIS Indoors and IPS assist in mapping and locating assets, and Field Maps is another configurable field application that provides staff location tracking, as well as tools for internal reporting of incidents or concerns, like the fictitious backpack that Kevin was sharing that could have been an observation from a field user. So these and also other real-time geospatial capabilities in ArcGIS really come together to enable situational awareness, monitoring, and analysis for many components in these security operations workflows. Fundamentally, all of these are about operationalizing critical information to support maintaining business continuity and unifying your security mission. And with that, we'll go ahead and take questions. There have been a lot of really good questions coming in as we've been going. So I've got a couple lined up here, but feel free to continue to ask more as I get through some of these that we already have. So one question that came in the beginning was, how did you add live data to the dashboard? Did you start with a map or add it directly to the dashboard? And the answer to that is that the dashboard is a configurable application within ArcGIS. It does start with what we call a web map. So there's basic viewers that allow you to kind of assemble a web map from different layers, and some of those layers could be live layers that are getting updated by other processes. So those live layers become part of your web map, and then your dashboard can key off those layers and it will automatically pull data on a heartbeat to show new information as it comes in. So hopefully that answers that question. Another question, Kevin, I'm probably going to toss over to you. Another question that came in early on was, is this information being pulled in from Jarvis? And I'm guessing that this was probably being asked about some of the global threat data that we were looking at in the beginning of the demonstrations. And I believe the answer is no. I know that there's a mix of data miner and factual information that is used here. Kevin, are there others, or is Jarvis involved?
No, Jarvis is a separate system used by a federal customer of ours, which basically pulls data from the same threat feeds, or some of the same threat feeds we're using. So we're not connecting directly to the Jarvis system. We're connecting to the same threat feeds that or some of the same threat feeds that they also monitor. So they're doing a very similar workflow in Jarvis. They're basically using ArcGIS to monitor threat feeds and determine if incidents are impacting their locations. It's essentially the same workflow, but we're not pulling from that system. We've just kind of replicated that workflow for our own facilities here.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you so much. And then on a similar vein, Kevin, somebody was curious about the layer you were using for the hurricane tracks during that part of the demonstration.
Yeah, that's coming straight out of the Living Atlas. If you go to livingatlas.arcgis.com, you'll see all the different feeds that are available to you, and you can add that directly to a web map. If you open up a web map and go to add data and select Living Atlas, you can type in hurricanes and you'll get access to that service. That's a free service, part of ArcGIS that we put out that everyone has access to.
Great, thank you. So another question on some of the messaging side of the things that we were showing. One question was, are you using ArcGIS Hub to send messages on incidents? And are you able to send messages to all workers at a given location, perhaps at an event? And so fundamentally to the first question, no. For the solutions we highlighted in this session today, we're not using ArcGIS Hub. What we're using, and I did have that sort of towards the end on the slide, so I think this question came in before that, but we're using a combination of ArcGIS Velocity, which is a SaaS real-time engine that we have in the platform. We're using configurable applications like Survey123. That was how Kevin showed an example of an analyst, sort of sending a query to a remote user that could then comment on if they were affected by an incident. And then for some integrations, like for example, pushing a notification to Microsoft Teams, there was webhooks involved in that. And to the second question, yes, throughout this technology, messages could be sent to all workers at a given location. Depending on the level of automation desired, a real-time analytic, for example, in ArcGIS Velocity, could join an incoming incident to all workers that are within a distance of it or nearby, and then send an email alert to each of them, for example. And then another option in that vein might be ArcGIS Mission. That's a product geared towards enabling staff in the field to coordinate and work together through chat and messaging. So that might be something to look into as well. Another question was, what is the IPS paired with indoors? And my apologies, IPS stands for Indoor Positioning System. So that's a component in our ArcGIS Runtime SDK that allows a mobile application to make use of indoor positioning and get accurate locations while inside a building without necessarily relying on GPS. And then there's some questions on kind of the real-time services side of the house. Can GeoEvent Server be used in lieu of ArcGIS Velocity? So some of you maybe who are familiar with the ArcGIS stack might be aware that we have two real-time server-side capabilities in ArcGIS. ArcGIS Velocity is a part of ArcGIS Online, and it's a SaaS-based real-time engine, whereas GeoEvent Server is a real-time engine for ArcGIS Enterprise when you want to run real-time services on your own infrastructure. And I believe the answer is generally yes. This suite of solutions has been built out and proven using both of those as a backend. And we do have customers that use GeoEvent Server for these workflows today. Another question that came in on this line was, does the ArcGIS Velocity app work with or replace GeoEvent Server? And the answer to the first part of that, ArcGIS Velocity can work with GeoEvent Server. It can be, for example, usually it's kind of the integration would happen at the data tier, if you will. So if GeoEvent Server was curating data sets and bringing in information, it's possible that ArcGIS Velocity's feeds could be polling those data sets for new information. Also in the next release of ArcGIS Velocity, we're going to enable output data to be stored to enterprise feature layers, in which case GeoEvent Server might be able to make use of them. ArcGIS Velocity doesn't replace GeoEvent Server. It's a SaaS form of a real-time engine, whereas GeoEvent Server is our primary real-time engine for enterprise. And then there was another question that came in, is that there was a presentation at the Security Summit. I'm guessing this means the ArcGIS Security Summit, that showed feeds coming in from White Fox. Is that presentation available? And yes, I think it is. We'll follow up with you later if we can make that presentation available. For those of you that aren't familiar, White Fox is an organization that provides drone locations. Sort of passively, they detect drone presence and report on drones that are in the air, and this can be used for counter surveillance monitoring. To that end, we also have an ArcGIS hosted webinar from last year that talks about this. And when we get the presentation from the Security Summit, if we can share that, we'll also share the webinar from last year as well. All right. Another question that came in while I've been going through these is, can metadata, if available, be injected and incorporated into the geodatabase feature class? How is this updated with time? So one way to answer that would probably be that if the content of the metadata, its structure is known, that metadata could be injected into the feature class as attributes or fields, and then as it comes in, something like ArcGIS Velocity or GeoEvent Server could be used to update those the same way it would other fields. If it's a matter of updating metadata and sort of capturing how the metadata is changing, but it's outside of the feature class, I'm not myself sure if that could be done, but we can look into that and follow up with you. So let's see, other questions. Another question that came in is, could we message phones in emergency situations? If it's talking about, if that question is sort of about sending a text notification, that is an output option for example, from ArcGIS Velocity's real-time analytics is sending a text message. But depending on the workflow, the ArcGIS field apps could also potentially do pop-up notifications on phones. So if the workflow involves the field users and they are also using an ArcGIS app on their phone, then the notification could potentially go through that way as well. So another question that came in is a use case focused question. The question is, we have bridges, in other words, critical infrastructure. They have sensors to monitor their integrity. Can all these sensors, and in some cases drone data, be fed into this for real-time monitoring of the health of these bridges? The answer is very possibly. I think the nuance would be the way that these sensors report data and how that data is made available to downstream applications. A product like ArcGIS Velocity or GeoEvent Server would most likely be a downstream application from the perspective of the sensor creator. But if that sensor provider makes that data available through a messaging broker that the organization or the buyer of those sensors can connect to, then that could be one way that real-time services that are offered by Velocity or GeoEvent could bring in that sensor data. And in a lot of cases, we see providers make sensor data available through an API that you can make periodic requests to for the latest information. So those are also cases where the data could be consumed through ArcGIS, made available visually, geospatially for monitoring. And then, yep, I think that so Lynette and Barbary, I think that might be we can give it a few more minutes if people have other questions, but I think that might be the end of it.
I think I do have one question for you. Is it possible to get an evaluation or a trial of the dashboards?
That is a good question. A lot of the technology that you've seen here is certainly available for evaluations, including ArcGIS Velocity. These solutions themselves, from an evaluation perspective, I might defer to Kevin for that one.
Yeah, mainly it's the data. Like a lot of the third-party data we really can't share outside because it's subscription-based. So the individual dashboard we showed, no, that one unfortunately we can't share externally. But every dashboard we show, it is essentially out of the box. You know, we're not writing code or doing a lot of work to design these. So you can certainly build them yourselves, and it's all out of the box technology.
That's great.
It's a good thing to emphasize, Kevin. Yeah, that these are essentially what you've seen today are no code solutions. They're all based on configurable applications.
They look impressive, but they're easy to use. That's always great news. And thanks again to Suzanne and Kevin for sharing their expertise. We really appreciate it, as well as a shout out to Akshaya for her work behind the scenes. It always takes a team. We hope that you will go out and make it a great day. Tell a friend about Esri's Real-Time Solutions and Directions Magazine. Thanks, everybody.